Interesting that he's got a nice mix of the swords, with one bonfire being his only spell. On the other side, on the left, I'm sorry, we actually, yeah, here we go. On the right, we have Brandon Anderson playing the Tezzeret deck that he's actually got a ton more sweepers than people would normally play in Tezzeret, with 3 Black Sun Zeniths, 4 Ratchet Bombs, 2 Curse of Death's Hold. He definitely was anticipating an aggressive field and wanted to have a variety of ways to sweep.
And I mean, 4 Ratchet Bomb, that seems to be a lot against a flipped Delver and Moorland Haunt and friends.
Oh, absolutely. And even against the red-green aggro decks, the fact that he has all of this removal, it adds up. If he, particularly if he can use one of his tumble magnets to make sure he doesn't just fall behind a sword. Now, interestingly, he's a little shy on victory conditions with basically just 1 Wormcoil Engine and 4 Tezzerets. Right. I mean, he's very much crutching on his Tezzeret, but these days the field is known enough that, like, what are people even doing? Like, most people aren't going over the top of that. It's always interesting to see all these Tezzeret decks because it seems like each generation of Tezzeret deck takes on a life of its own. Most of them are the, brainchild of Shouta at each different tournament where he unveils his latest Tezzeret deck. But each one, either, like, sometimes it's blue-black control, sometimes it's aggro control, sometimes it's like a heavy planeswalker deck, sometimes they add black, sometimes they add red, sometimes white. And sometimes they end up with just lots of sweet cards like Bloodline Keeper or Consecrated Sphinx. So both players debating on their opening hands. It looks like Brandon, considering whether or not to shuffle it back, decides to keep it. Leads with the Dark Slick Shores. Brandon Smith, playing a relatively traditional Naya aggro deck, has the Razorverge Thicket Birds of Paradise start. Now, every game these guys have the Mana Accelerators on turn 1. They end up just presenting a much more aggressive game. Brandon drops the Swamp. It's not clear at this point that he's playing Tezzeret.
Could be Esper would be the most common thing to expect to see at this point.
Right, or even blue-black control. Although, interestingly, we see yet another revised Swamp.
Yep.
These people in Detroit are maniacs. So the mana leak, giving every indication that he's actually just playing control, and the fact that from here he drops a Swamp instead of a white mana, it starts to suggest he's probably playing blue-black control, but he might also be playing Tezzeret.
Well, I mean, to be fair, his build of Tezzeret is just a Tezzeret blue-black control deck. When I say just, I mean it's a blue-black control deck that fits in a Tezzeret shell.
Right, like instead of Ponder and Alchemy, he's just playing Ichor Wellspring and Tumble Magnet.
Tumble Magnet is such a blast from the past.
Absolutely.
I haven't seen that since Clawblade.
Absolutely. I think Michael Jacob, Brad Nelson, and Conley Woods were some of the original people who really popularized that card.
Ooh, Black Sun Zenith for the board.
So, Brandon Smith packs it up with Birds of Paradise and Huntmaster biting it. At this point, Brandon's going to be pretty happy with the turn of events so far. He managed to stop each of the first couple threats and is ahead on cards. He's got a nice mana advantage. He's got Pristine Talisman, which is going to keep giving him more edge over time.
Talisman right now effectively acts like a weak removal spell that he doesn't even have to cast, really.
Absolutely, and it's giving him a mana every turn. Because the Talisman by itself is effectively neutralizing, half a Strangleroot Geist every turn. And this is every turn even before the Geist comes out.
And we see some more mana. Brandon tapping 2. Well, maybe not. Maybe just 1. No, 2.
Pristine Talisman, it's been such an underrated card through its life as Standard.
Wow.
And it's done well. It's like one of the biggest rewards you get for only playing 2 colors in playing a slowing deck, or 3 colors even, but...
And we see an Inkmoth Nexus versus 2 mana creatures, and a lot of mana tapped very haphazardly.
Is this a Batterskull?
5.
Oh, Curse of Death's Hold.
Oh, goodness.
Curse of Death's Hold is very effective.
Look at it. He's just tearing... Okay, Anderson is just tearing Smith apart. I want to say Brandon, but Brandon
and Brandon.
Yes. But Anderson's just tearing Smith apart here. Tezzeret totally in control at this point, but a Huntmaster, if Brandon doesn't do something else, could flip and be at least a reasonable clock.
Wow. This has been a tough one. And Brandon is supposed to be the aggressor. He's supposed to be beating down each of these turns. because he's, he doesn't really have that much late game beyond put a sword on something. But I think at this point, as long as Brandon can keep a sword under control, he's in real good shape. So Inkmoth Nexus begins the beats.
Okay, poison. And Smith unsleeves his Huntmaster to make a gigantic werewolf. Only 3/3 right now. That still represents a total of 6 damage this turn. 2 for the damage from the creature flipping, and 4 otherwise from these creatures still in play. For those of you who are just joining us, I'm Adrian Sullivan. With me is Patrick Chapin, and you're watching Round 5. Brandon Smith on the left with a Naya aggro deck. Brandon Anderson on the right with a Tezzeret control deck. Waiting for the next stage in Brandon Anderson's dominance of this game. I mean, it's clear that it's not in any way just straight up over. That damage on Brandon Smith's side of the table is not fake. More poison from Brandon Anderson as the Ink Moths come on in. I believe that's 4 poison right now. 3 poison, only 1 Ink Moth coming in the turn before. A 4-point clock still on the table. Sword. Cast and is equipped from the... Missed the sword on the table before. Sword equipped and in for a total of 6 plus your hand. Does Brandon Anderson have any answers to this equipped creature coming on in? Be useful to have a Doomblade or something like that. He does have 1 Doomblade in his deck. It looks like no, that's going to hit. I see a swamp and maybe an island in Anderson's hand. 1 extra life ticking up from the ratchet or from the pristine talisman, but he needs something else. That sword is going to do a lot of damage. The Inkmoth can jump in the way, but he just keeps going for the poison. 2 more poison up to 5.
Impressive comeback.
And back to Brandon Smith. Anderson just thinking he's going to race that. 5 poison to 11 life. See Brandon Smith on the left here, coming on in for another 6 plus the hand. The Curse of Death's Hold making these guys not as damaging, but still quite painful. And a Phyrexian Metamorph for 2 life from Brandon Smith. Looks like it's a copy of the Ravager of the Fells. Another 3/3 in this case. Brandon Anderson basically needs a Black Sun Zenith or a Wormcoil Engine, I think, to be able to be in this. And Brandon Anderson looking at his mana, thinking a little bit here, but does he have anything to survive this next turn? He has his opponent at 5 poison. A Tezzeret could actually, if he has sufficient mana, I can't quite see the bottom right corner of the mana because of the names for me and Patrick here, but if he has a Tezzeret, he might be able to do a kill. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He has enough if he had a Tezzeret, but does not make that play. Lays the land, says go. Looks like Inkmoth Nexus is going to be on the defense now. Bonfire is a miracle. One and 3. 3 damage bonfire. Will this end it? Apparently the bonfire resolving, and Brandon Anderson scooping up this first game. Again, Brandon Smith on the left with Naya aggro, Brandon Anderson on the right with Tezzeret control. This started out as a game where Brandon Anderson was fully in the driver's seat. He Black Sun Zenithed away the entire table, followed up with a Curse of Death's Hold to clear away Brandon Smith's creatures again, and then Brandon Smith drops a Huntmaster of the Fells, flips the Huntmaster, and equips a Sword of War and Peace. And it takes 3 attacks, but 3 attacks is enough, despite Brandon Anderson gaining life that whole game.
Wow. Well, I mean, we knew it was going to come down to whether or not he could keep a sword under control.
That's one of the things that's usually the case with a lot of the control decks is, what do you do if a sword hits the table? And, you know, we talked about a little bit ago the Oblivion Ring in Michael Jacob and I want to say Ari Lax's deck. And
Brian DeMars.
And Brian DeMars. And how Adam Prozac, with a very similar deck, struggled without having an Oblivion Ring to find answers to Sword.
So what are we going to see out of the sideboard from this Niagara deck?
I would expect Mana Barbs are one of the first orders of business here. Mana Barbs just so powerful in this kind of matchup. And I also would expect that Thalia, despite being vulnerable to Curse, can forestall such things being a problem enough that maybe the game will just end. Beast Within is also a classic answer to control decks, just by either stymieing their mana a little bit or answering a problematic card like Curse of Death's Hold, because that 3/3 often is outclassed by the rest of the creatures on the table.
Now it's interesting that he actually does not have access to Ancient Grudge, a traditional red-green, just a red-green weapon in general. But hopefully the combination of Sword of Body and Mind, Beast Within, Talia, Run, Mana Barbs, basically he just wants to transform his threats to being more, I guess, harassing. On the other side, Anderson with Tezzeret has kind of a sideboard only a miser could love. He's got everything from Sword of Feast and Famine to Bloodline Keeper to Grave Titan to Sever the Bloodline to see which other ones might he bring in. I think that's probably the extent of the ones he'd actually bring in. But he even has a second Grafdigger's Cage in his sideboard that he can Trinket Mage for against the appropriate people. But this matchup, I think he's probably just going to stick with the cards I mentioned, try to get a little bit more mid-rangey of a game plan. The Grave Titans and Bloodline Keepers in particular are going to let him kind of take over against Brandon's lack of removal. You know, like if he can just go removal spell, and then drop a Bloodline Keeper, he can just, you know, as long as he doesn't fall behind a sword, like a Sword of Feast and Famine, or let the Huntmaster do too much work, he should be in pretty good shape. So, yeah, overall, I mean, it's tough to say. The matchup is definitely relatively close, but I think Anderson might have the edge as long as the swords aren't too much.
I agree. I mean,
4 Ratchet Bombs help too.
4 Ratchet Bombs is a big deal. Grave Titan from the sideboard seems like it's like custom made for this kind of opponent.
Absolutely, and Bloodline Keeper for that matter. I mean, Smith doesn't even have access to Daybreak Ranger, so he can't even keep it under control from a distance. You know.
Now, Brandon Smith does have the possibility of very fast starts, and then he has Kessig Wolf Run and Gavney Township, so there are things he can do to really punish Brandon should he stumble.
Yeah, particularly since, I mean, Brandon's going to have to win, Anderson's going to have to win 2 games on the play in order to take the match, and not every game is going to be so easy as to be able to stop the turn 2 Splicer, turn 3 Huntmaster draw, you know?
Both of these players are at 3-0-1 right now. I'm actually curious what Brandon Smith's draw was against.
I mean,
it can happen to anything, but, you know.
Absolutely. I'm going to guess percentage-wise, probably one of the slower Esper decks, like some kind of Esper like Delver, or Delverless Delver, you know.
I would see that as being a real possibility.
Or it was secretly the Lantax Mirror. and they were just playing that to determine the outcome of the match, which my understanding is not legal. So it's probably just a joke. Probably.
Careful with jokes.
Dude, absolutely. I heard Detroit is like an airport. It's not safe to joke here. Mostly because it's not safe to do anything from what I hear. But no, actually, I think some people were talking about that yesterday. Is Detroit the type of city where you got to be, even at a tournament, careful about walking around outside? Now, personally, as a native of, the hood, I can tell you that this particular area of Detroit, not too bad compared to, some of the areas on the south side, but definitely one of the more gangster locations for a Magic tournament.
Now, I think general rule of thumb, if you're in a city you're not quite sure about, for whatever reason, whether because you're skittish or because maybe you shouldn't be not quite sure about it, is just walk with a friend. Don't obviously be having a lot of valuables with you at night alone.
I don't know. I think if you just keep your right hand like under your shirt the right way and just kind of point two of the fingers out, you'll send the right message.
Fair enough. Now this comes to you straight from Patrick Chapin, Detroit native.
What up? What up, gangsta?
Now on the left, Brandon Smith, Naya Agro. On the right, Brandon Anderson, Tezzeret. I have to say, I'm really rooting for this Tezzeret deck, mostly because I want to keep seeing this later on in the tournament.
Dude, don't you want to see Tezzeret versus Grixis?
That would be an amazing final.
Yes! If there's two things I love in this world, they're both Jace the Mind Sculptor. But if there's several more, I think Grixis and Tezzeret are probably up there.
Huh.
That's not true. Amanda, hi. Mom.
I don't think I've ever met your mom. I've met Amanda many times.
Yes, Amanda, very awesome. My mom, I think she's one of your bigger fans. Even though you two haven't met, I think she's watched you from a distance.
Okay.
Study.
Spellskite from Brandon Anderson, facing off against Stranglerootgeist.
That's another one of the attributes of Spellskite. He's done so many different surprising things. One of the things he does is he holds off persist creatures like Giroff's Messenger and Stranglerootgeist, as well as virtual persist creatures like Gravecrawler.
And we see a Ratchet Bomb, something we both talked about earlier. Now, those are beta there. Looks like I don't.
Yes, Beta Islands. Absolutely, that's the Mark Poole special.
We
very nearly taps for 2 blue mana, give or take 1 mana.
It's sort of like Orcish Oriflame in that way.
Yes.
And a block from the Spellskite. 2 damage for Brandon Anderson. No token on the Ratchet Bomb, apparently. Oh, look at this. You gotta do better than that to get past these guys, Brandon.
Right, so he knows the Phyrexia Metamorph and the Stranglerootgeist both have a cost of 2, so there's no need to tick it up and threaten them because the Spellskites are holding them off. Instead, he wants to keep the Ratchet Bomb at 0 so that a Huntmaster can be neutralized.
Block. Got anything? I think it's very likely that Brandon Smith has sideboarded out any thing like Bonfire of the Damned that might help finish them off with 1 more mana.
Wow, it's crazy just how good Spellskite is in this matchup.
Huntmaster. Now, if Brandon does nothing, the Huntmaster does flip, and the Ratchet Bomb can kill the Wolf and the Huntmaster. Speaking of...
Now remember, even though you're allowed to let your opponent miss his triggers, you can't intentionally miss your own triggers. Such as, like, for instance, if you want to try to get around the Ratchet Bomb, it is not legal to not flip your Huntmaster when it's supposed to. But, Brandon Smith, flipping it, 2 to Brandon's face, 2 to a Spellskite. Effectively, it's a virtual 4 damage because that Spellskite's not going to block this turn. And Brandon's going to take 2 from the Geist that's unblocked and 2 from the Huntmaster. Restoration Angel saving the Huntmaster. An excellent play.
Mana leak for the Restoration Angel.
Oh, okay, there you go. And now keep in mind, Anderson's doing this all off of just 2 islands.
Yeah.
He's definitely a bit light on mana, but all things considered, he's not putting up too bad of a fight.
That was a pretty intense turn. I mean, a lot of things happening that turn.
Things are happening right now!
And untap, Brandon Anderson trying to stabilize. He wants a 3rd land more than anything. A swamp would be nice.
Absolutely. Like, I think Darkslick Shores, Drowned Catacombs, Swamp, World Peace, Happiness, and maybe, just any other land even, are all near the top of his list.
Brandon Smith drops a Cavern of Souls, naming, I'm guessing whatever this is.
Human for a change?
Human.
Shocking.
He might have named Shapeshifter.
Very well might have named Shapeshifter. He also might have just named... Does he need any... Does he have... Yeah, he has all of his colors pretty well set up.
He could have named Wolf.
I don't think I'd name Shapeshifter if I were him. But I guess it's possible. Does he just want to save the life?
Humans. Shocking.
It feels like Metamorph should be like a construct instead of a... shapeshifter.
Wow, a second Blade Splicer. This time off of the not Cavern of Souls. I'm going to tell you that...
You think you would have done it in the other order?
the other direction would have been nice.
Psychological warfare.
A swamp for Brandon Anderson. Is it too late?
What he needs to do is hold Brandon off a little bit more, just, keep preventing some damage. He needs... even if he just Ratchet Bombs away the 2 golems, he's only taking 2 damage a turn.
Yeah.
So Ratchet Bomb is good here. Black Sun Zenith isn't the worst, but it's pretty slow and doesn't really help with the Geist thing, because it doesn't, it's so bad with Spell Skites. I think Ratchet Bomb is really, really what he needs to see. But mostly he just needs to buy himself some time.
A Pristine Talisman would be unterrible.
If you went Pristine Talisman into Curse of Death's Hold?
Yeah, like lay a Pristine Talisman, and next turn Curse, for example.
And then he still blocks the Geists, and then he's taking 4 a turn.
Metamorph, this is going to be a Geist. Maybe a Blade Splicer, actually. Maybe a Blade Splicer.
Blade Splicer would not be too bad here. He does decide to make it a Geist.
Yeah, he can get the Blade Splicer on the comeback.
Yep.
That Metamorph does have the Geist's traits. So when it comes back, it'll come back with +1/+1 on it, but it can become something new.
Very interesting. Not a bad play, but the 2 life it costs to cast it is definitely very relevant with this much pressure.
I expect we're going to see Spell Skites blocking Golems and Strangleroot Geist.
Why don't you attack with both? Like, if he's going to block one, he's going to block one. So I think the Blade Splicer probably should have just got in there, but... In any event, 2 Spell Skites block the 2 Geists, and the Metamorph blocks... is that just blocking a Golem? I believe it is. So he's going to take 4, and the Strangleroot Geist the Metamorphed Geist comes back as a Blade Splicer, I'm assuming, with a +1/+1 counter.
Trigger. There we are. Giving the gift of Golems.
Seize the play. That sounds like that should be a magic card. Giving the gift of Golems. So Brandon decides he's committed enough, ships the turn. Other Brandon, surveying his options, appears to continue to not have more land. Very tough. Very, very, very tough.
Anderson is not in he's not in a great position, but not in a terrible one either. His Spell Skites nullify the Golems, and then he's got a 3/3 First Striker and a 2/2 that can also do really decent blocks on the other creatures there.
Absolutely. Smith really does need to he's got to get one more threat going. I mean, a Silverheart would just break things open, but...
In with Golems.
This does so little. This does so little because of those Spell Skites.
And then the Splicers, I think they have to go in.
So one Splicer gets blocked by a 2/2 Splicer.
Yep. Golems by Spell Skites. And a First Striker...
will probably block a Strangleroot Geist.
That seems fair.
The original, not the Metamorph. Although it's possible that he'll just want to block the another Blade Splicer.
I think he's actually going to go with...
Because if he blocks both Blade Splicers, then his First Striking Golem can take down the other Golem.
I don't think that's what's going to be... Oh, boy.
Wow.
That is pretty rough.
So he does elect to block both Blade Splicers.
And Mana Leak on the Mana Barbs. Wow.
Life-saving. Yeah, because there he did elect to block both humans, both of the Blade Splicer original copies, which means that his 3/3 First Striker actually stabilizes the board.
Yeah.
Now, Brandon tries to lock him out of ever being able to play spells again with Mana Barbs, but is 1 mana short of being able to pay for the timely Mana Leak.
Now look at this. Brandon Anderson, 4 life, but practically safe. I mean, he worked on 2 mana this whole time.
I mean, he's still dead to a Zealous... I guess Zealous Conscript isn't dead, but a Zealous Conscript is real bad. A Wolfir Silverheart is bad. Metamorph is bad. Restoration Angel's bad. I mean,
His conscript's that bad? He's got Spellskite out.
he does. But that's one more hasty attacker and one less blocker.
That's true. And he's at 4 life. I mean, there's only so much life.
Correct.
Wow. Okay. He's like, wait a second.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
Take backsies.
Psych. 10th edition rules. 10th edition. M10 rules. It's like Moto. You just click the undo button. You pray that you can undo enough of it.
And he's like, I'm not going to. That's the null attack. And let's lay a Pilgrim. Say go.
So now we have a little bit of a waiting game. Can Brandon get a lot of things going before, or can Tezzeret get a lot of things going before the Naya aggro deck is able to finish the job? It will not take much, but it will take a little bit more. Kessig Wolf Run would be devastating.
Oh, wow, that would be. Well, I mean, the Spellskite still.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, Kessig Wolf Run wouldn't be too bad. I guess another Mana Barbs and just more cards that cost 4. Restoration Angel, Huntmaster, or a Zealous Conscript, Wolfir Silverheart, Thrun even. Definitely an exciting game.
And Brandon Smith, I think, going to pass the turn soon. Brandon Anderson waiting. He's got a full hand full of cards. Remember, when you're strangling on mana, cards tend to just sit there. So he's got a whole bunch of resources that he maybe can't cast yet, but they're there waiting. Oh, Smith,
God, he
agonizing.
He wants to pull the trigger.
Turn it sideways. How much do I do?
Because the thing is, if he attacks with everything, he does make progress. Because the 2/2 on Anderson's side will die. Now, he'll lose something to First Strike, but the game state will be a little different, and he may think it's advantageous to him to mix it up that way.
Look at that hand. He's got Tezzeret and a bunch of other friends waiting, hanging out.
So, up next we see Sword of War and Peace.
It feels like bait, but maybe that's the actual real threat.
Well, I think it's just what he drew for this turn, and he just has to do it.
And it works.
Yeah, Sword is absolutely fantastic.
That is awesome. Wow.
Now, the weird thing is that he puts it on the Metamorphed Stranglegeist, which can still be blocked by a first striking Golem. Now, I get that the Metamorph will be able to come back and be a Blade Splicer, and that's cool, but it seems like it might just be worth it to just start abyssing Anderson right now. Put it on your Golem. Give him the business. Introduce him to the deli.
I think that is the technical term.
Absolutely.
The business.
Absolutely. And deli as well, for that matter.
Oh, Brandon doesn't see the first striking, I don't think. Brandon Anderson.
Or he just doesn't want to reset Smith's Metamorph, because the Metamorph would turn into a Blade Splicer.
Yep. Or alternately, it could turn into a Sword of War and Peace.
Wow. That would be definitely very dangerous.
Go for the throat. He's refraining from killing it. That's what he's doing. He's just refraining from killing it.
Well, the Metamorph can't be throated.
Oh, yeah,
obviously.
good point. But I mean, yeah. Thank you. It's not Doomblade.
Yep. If there's one thing that a Metamorph does not have, it is a throat.
Which is so weird, because it's such a good copy.
Yeah, but it's like a robot.
It's like a robot throat.
Yeah, it's like Harrison Ford. Like, he looks like it's a person, but he's really just a robot, you know?
I thought that was Michael Douglas.
I don't know. Whoever Blade Runner is. I'm not talking about the term. If there's one thing... Okay, people at home, who did you think we were talking about? Did you think we were talking about Terminator, Prometheus, or Blade Runner?
And here we have a sword. F and F.
Sword of Feast and Famine. A little slow for this position.
I mean, an all-out attack here would be just the clear play.
I mean, there's not really a lot. I mean, Anderson... It's going to take a strange sequence of events to be able to come back. I mean, I guess a Tumble Magnet help? No, because he's got to make forward progress. And he's about to lose his Blade Splicer, so he loses the ability to copy future Blade Splicers.
Well, if he lays a Tezzeret next turn, his sword can turn into a 5/5.
Yeah, it's still not enough, though, because he's going to be down to... He's going to take a damage, and he'll be facing lethal, even if he makes his sword a 5/5. Yeah,
unless Brandon Smith is just passive.
Yeah, if Smith doesn't attack with all his creatures, then Anderson has counterplay, but...
And we see the death of the Blade Splicer copy. Oh, maybe not.
Oh, because the Blade Splicer's white.
Okay, can't block.
Correct.
One of the few moments where Take Back works when you are not using reality. There is a reality to the game.
Judge.
There we go, 5th mana.
I mean, maybe the play is that he just has 2 Doom Blades in his hand. I would be surprised.
I think the play is he's got to go for the throat in the one. I don't know if there's...
No Snapcasters.
Yeah. Only 1 Doom Blade in the list.
So he could Doom Blade 1 and throat the other.
Wow.
Yeah. This is a tough way to do it.
Makes a big golem, 5/5 golem, and he still has that go for the throat in his hand.
And because Smith did not attack with everything, Anderson definitely has counterplay. You know, like he hasn't lost yet. I mean, Smith has a huge advantage, but he cannot just sit around and hang out. He's got to finish the deal because once Anderson draws, as Anderson continues to play land, he's got a lot of powerful cards left in his hand.
Metamorph.
Absolutely. Is this going to be a Strangleroot Geist?
Might be a Blade Splicer. Oh wait, the Blade Splicer's dead.
Yep.
No, it's alive. It's alive. It's the Metamorph on Brandon's side is the Blade Splicer.
Right. Now, this nice thing about the Strangleroot Geist is... Yes, this gives him yet another attacker. So if he attacks... What?
I do not know what just happened there.
Wow.
Okay.
Oh, it's a sword.
Ah.
So the Metamorph is a sword on the Strangleroot Geist.
There we go.
But he's still only attacking with the 2 swords. Why doesn't he attack with the golems too and finish the job?
And we see the punishment that he gets for that.
Wow, playing so conservatively.
Now, some people, when they think about conservative play, they hear that and they're like, oh yeah, you're playing safely. Well,
it'd be a lot safer if you just sign the match slip 2-0 your way.
You know what? If you are afraid to have your soldiers die, you might lose the battle.
So, we have the... we have a sword in play. He's deciding what to do with it. Looks like his Strangleroot Geist is going to come back. Is it going to come back as a Blade Splicer? His Metamorphed Strangleroot Geist is coming back as a Blade Splicer with a +1/+1 counter that is also an artifact.
This is true.
That's not weird. So, yet another Golem is going to enter the table. Now, at this point, Brandon's window is now. He needs to draw a Ratchet Bomb. Something fierce.
Anderson could totally do a lot of damage with a Ratchet Bomb.
Absolutely. He could turn it around. He's not dead yet. He's mostly dead, but
not dead yet.
Mostly dead is still very much partly alive.
This is true. Thank you for dropping all these truth bombs.
Absolutely, dude. That's what I do. I drop bombs.
Will Smith storm the castle? I don't know.
We have... God, that's a lot of Metamorphs and swords.
What are his assets?
So he's got 3 golems, a sword on a Metamorph of a Blade Splicer with a counter.
5th land from Anderson.
No Ratchet Bomb, though. I don't know how many extra leases on life he could possibly hope for. I mean, at this point, he's facing 5 threats with his 2 blockers. Like, the jig is pretty close to up. I think his best hope is that Smith stays home with the golems and only attacks with the swords creatures again. I mean, keep in mind, this isn't just out of nowhere. Smith is trying to play around Snapcaster Mage Doomblade. He doesn't want to just walk face first into it. So we see...
God, Anderson fighting so hard to come back into this. What's he going to do on his main phase? Black Suns for 3. Now, this does reset the Strangleroot Geist.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't.
It does not. It's not. Yeah, absolutely. It does not reset the Strangleroot Geists.
I believe it does.
It does not.
The token's removed.
I predict the judge will rule in favor of it not. Now, the reason is because all of the counters are placed on at the same time.
Okay.
It doesn't put one counter on, then one counter on, one then counter on. It's kind of a weird ruling. Like, you look at it and you think, oh, well, it should remove the counter on the way. But it just, when the creature died, the moment before it died, it had a counter on it. So the Strangleroot Geist doesn't trigger.
Interesting.
Yep.
That was not how I understood it to work.
And, interestingly, this is going to mean that Brandon is once again actually still alive. He's got a creature big enough to hold off Smith's swords.
And if he attacks here, let's see, if he attacks, will it survive if it hits? And theoretically then be able to untap his 5 mana to let him play another spell to be able to defend himself against the one defender that...
Well, it is a white creature, and his opponent has a Sword of War and Peace. So.
That's right, it's not...
Yeah.
It's a... Oh, no, that's a golem.
Oh, it is the golem. You're right, it's a golem with 3 counters.
2/2 golem.
Wow.
It would have been 2...
Yeah, but maybe he just didn't have a blocker.
Oh, yeah.
Either way, at this point, he now has to chump. But all things considered, he's still in it. This is a remarkable attempt at a comeback by Anderson. I mean, he's still a long shot. This is still a very, very, very tough spot, but he has played an incredible game trying to claw his way back into this one.
How long was he sitting on 2 mana?
I mean, this is, you know what they say? I mean, it's like John Cena said, never give up. Never give up.
To be fair, I think that Smith in this matchup had a couple of opportunities to take a little risk, but the return seemed so big. You know, like, his opponent nearly crippled, drop your opponent down to 2 or 1, and still have a clock on the table.
It's always tough when you're in those spots where you feel like the game is over, it should be won, but, you know, you're not focusing your full mental energy. You should, but you're not always. Sometimes you're already picturing the victory lap, and... So now Anderson...
Now, do we have confirmation that that second Metamorph is a War and Peace, or is it a Feast and Famine?
Definitely not sure.
Okay, they're both War and Peace. And we see Pristine Talisman, the beginning of the clawing back in.
Wait.
1 life, 5.
Is this a magnet? It is a
Liliana!
Wow!
Oh my god.
Wow! Unbelievable.
Okay, so a Strangleroot Geist from Brandon Smith will end it.
There's the
Bird?
Paradise, about to pick up a bunch of swords. And once again, Anderson, for the 9th turn in a row, is facing certain doom. Unbelievable. What is he going to produce next? What's the next trick he's going to pull out? Any more rabbits in his hat?
Nothing up my sleeve.
This is unbelievable. I'm really impressed. And his resolve, too. Just the determination, keeping your cool despite...
What a magician. I mean, honestly, he just keeps pulling it out. It's like,
It'd be so easy to tilt away the match, but at this point, he's like, okay, I'm going to have to, some things are going to have to go right. I'm going to have to get really lucky.
Let's both discard. What's he say? Discard a land versus a Batterskull. Wow, what is even his hand?
Well, the Batterskull doesn't help with the immediate problem, the bird. But
I understand. That's just like
I think that's Smith's last... Oh, no, Smith still has 2 more cards. Yeah, he wants to tick it up so that he has an edict available for next turn.
Worm Coil?
Yep.
And just enough for Brandon Anderson to survive. At 6 life, a sword from Brandon Smith, another sword, would finish it.
And because he Liliana and discard a card, does he have few enough cards?
Oh!
Wow! That's the Haymaker.
Oh.
Plus 2 damage. This should be all she wrote. An impressive game.
Wow.
An excellent match.
Oh, look at Brandon Anderson.
He tried. He did everything he could.
I fought so hard.
And he smiled. All he can do is smile.